Vikings fans, thank you for clicking on the Purple People podcast. My name is Kyle West. I got Adam Carlson.
Right here.
I got Kyle Smith.
Yeah, buddy.
And we have the first preseason game, the Hall of Fame game, that we're going to break down today. We are all so excited to be talking about the return of Vikings football.
We sure are. But first, I do want to say this is the new and improved Purple People podcast, because thanks to the generous donations of people on our GoFundMe account, we have been able to set up our account so that we will no longer be experiencing interruptions on our iTunes, Stitcher, or Podomatic account for the people who listen through that way. So I want to thank everyone. And again, head on over to the Facebook page because we are running a nice little promotion to give away a prize for some lucky listener who wants to win a Minnesota Vikings jersey.
Yeah, you should check it out. Sign up. Win yourself
Definitely
a jersey,
should.
guys. Come on. This would be awesome.
Thank you. Thank you, Adam, for setting it up. We all brainstormed on it, but as usual, Adam is the brains of the operation and gets everything going. But now you guys can not be so bummed out and or irritated with us because we will be on your iTunes. And I know a lot of people use that, so take full advantage. You guys did this for us and for yourselves.
Yeah, definitely a huge thank you go out to you guys.
Now you can listen to us. So now you can listen
ahead.
to us when you're working out, when you're in the car. Just pull it up on iTunes. We'll be there all the time for you.
Absolutely. And before I forget, this is episode number 164 of the Purple People podcast. This one is titled Teaching Mrs. Tingelhoff. Now, you guys have seen Teaching Mrs. Tingle, right?
Yes, I have.
Thank goodness, finally one I hit. Yes. If you guys have not heard of Teaching Mrs. Tingle, it's a movie came out in 1999, had a lot of big stars in it: Helen Mirren, Katie Holmes, Jeffrey Tambor, Molly Ringwald, Vivica A. Fox, just lots of stars. And it's actually a pretty amusing movie. There's some funny moments, but it's a thriller too. It's worth checking out if you get a chance.
Mm-hmm. It's no Paul Blart, but it'll suffice. It'll get it done.
I don't
there's
think
a reason.
anything would be Paul Blart.
Yeah.
No, Paul Blart is not in this one as far as I know. Not as far as my memory serves anyway.
They should go back and CGI him into it.
But we have a very limited number of quick hits because we have a ton to talk about today. We have Anthony Barr. Vikings have been talking about his knee being a little bit of a concern. Because of that, he missed out on the action during the Hall of Fame game between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Minnesota Vikings. They're not sure how long that's going to last, but I think they got a little plan up their sleeves as to what to do if the worst happens. So we'll talk about that a little bit later, too. The Minnesota Vikings compared wide receiver Stephon Diggs, who was a rookie this year. They've been comparing him to Percy Harvin, but according to his athletics, not his attitude or anything like that. So that's a good thing. Plus, the coaches have been saying that this kid just gets it, which is a good thing to hear from a coach because you don't want to hear anything too specific. Mm-hmm. But when a coach says, this is a guy that gets it, you know that's a compliment.
You hear he gets it, and you also hear, but he understands that he has a lot more work to do. Two really great things from Stephon Diggs that I can think of another wide receiver on this team that could learn from that attitude.
Don't talk about Mike Wallace like that.
I ain't talking about Mike Wallace.
This is kind of like just a quick mention one. The San Francisco 49ers have released cornerback Chris Cook. As you know, he used to be a member of the Minnesota Vikings, former second-round draft pick. He was looking forward to playing against the Vikings on the season opener on Monday Night Football, saying that he was going to tear things up.
Oops.
Yeah, about that. Sorry.
There is a really strong possibility that Chris Cook could be done in the NFL without getting a single interception his entire career.
He had one in preseason.
Does
that count?
No, that does not count at all.
My final quick hit it's a fun one. Head coach Mike Zimmer took the Minnesota Vikings to the Pro Football Hall of Fame He went around and he was showing him all these legendary players that had their busts on display and had all their stats listed, and was talking about all the great players in history, how much they got paid during the time, the injuries they played through, how the seasons went, the weather conditions they played in, the health conditions, everything. And he used that to inspire these players to realize how valuable their opportunity in the NFL is and why they should appreciate everything they've got going for them. But in addition, he also wanted to show them how much of an impact that their careers can have on the future of football by looking at what these legends were able to do for the game in the past. So it was really cool to see that. I'm excited about the Vikings getting that little bit of history to kind of springboard their future. I love it.
Very cool stuff. People on Twitter who follow us, you can see I retweeted a lot of the guys who were posting photos of some of the stuff they were looking at. It's very neat to see our current guys out there taking a look. There was a really cool photo of Adrian Peterson, someone took from behind with all the Hall of Fame busts in front of him with the caption of future Hall of Fame player looking at current Hall of Fame players. So that was really neat.
Definitely pretty cool. All right, so it isn't very often that when we have a game, we have a main topic. Usually we just do our quick hits, we'll go into the game review, and then we'll do our game preview, touch on our social media, and call it a day. But when something as major as Minnesota Vikings center Mick Tingelhoff getting inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame happens, you have to make an exception. He was an undrafted free agent that came to the Vikings. They transitioned him from defense to center. He played 17 years for the team, didn't miss a single game or practice. This kid, at the time, had no clue the impact he was going to have on the franchise, but he worked hard, kept his nose clean, and protected Fran Tarkenton with everything he had. And because of that, I'm proud to say that Mick Tingelhoff, a major part of the Minnesota Vikings organization, is now in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
What an epic career and coming from where he came from. And if you guys missed it, we all are in agreement here. Best part about the speech was he didn't say a word. Fran came up there and he gave his absolute raw emotion, 100% truth of how much of a guy he was. And half of it wasn't even for football. Just talking about how much he trusted him. He said in the commercial break, or leading up to the commercial break, nobody wanted to mess with me when he was out there because he protected me. He was my onlooker everywhere I went. And, he was such an outstanding guy. And he always knew he could buy him some more time, when he was scrambling around. But if you get a chance, look and see what Fran had to say for him. I thought it was pretty epic that Mick didn't talk at all.
Well, Mick was also dealing with some major health issues. He's at his age, he's also dealing with some instances of dementia,
short-term memory loss. Yeah.
Which is why when you saw them both approaching the podium, Fran kept asking him, do you want to say thank you? Do you want to say anything? And I think that even if Mick didn't have these issues, I don't know if he still would have spoke. I think he's that kind of guy.
It was really awesome, how it went down. It was also kind of sad afterward that you hear, that he's, maybe got the short-term memory loss issues, whatever, because he waited so long to go into the Hall of Fame. You just wish that maybe if they would have done it 10, 15 years ago, maybe he would have been able to give a little bit more of a speech, of an acceptance speech to it. But it was still very classy how the whole thing went down. And, I'm glad that he's in there.
He got a huge, huge standing ovation from the crowd. His family was on hand. His wife was absolutely emotional in the crowd. A really great moment in Vikings and football history, just seeing him go in the Hall of Fame.
Way to get your history lesson, too. Got to hear a lot about the core of that dominant era of Viking football, too.
Some of the players that he went head-to-head with at that time were Hall of Famers.
Legendary players he had to play against back in the day.
Don't you guys love the old school? Vikings highlights from that era.
Absolutely.
I absolutely love when they go back and they show that era of football because it really is a completely different style of football than what we get today, and it's so much fun to go back and to relive and to not relive, but to glimpse into what that era was like.
That's the only experience that we can get to go with it, and if that's the taste we get, I'm more than pleased with it. So let's talk about the Pro Football Hall of Fame game now. The Minnesota Vikings took on the Pittsburgh Steelers in Canton, Ohio. The Minnesota Vikings came out winning 14-3 in a low-scoring affair. Now, the really interesting thing about this game is that it drew a 6.9 overnight rating. Now, I know a lot of you guys probably aren't familiar with television ratings. I am because of the work I've done on the Walking Dead website. But to put things in perspective, this rating is higher than Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Finals, Game 1 of both the NBA Eastern and Western Conference Finals, the Indy 500, Game 1 of the American League and National League Championship games. People tuned in to watch this game because it's their first taste of football, and to be honest, I don't think they cared what was on the screen as long as it was football.
You are 1,000% correct.
How awesome is that more people watched a completely meaningless and worthless preseason football game than the Indy 500?
And let's be honest, it's not like there wasn't shows going up against this. Big Brother is a ratings juggernaut on CBS. On FX, you've got The Strain. There were other great programs going on at this time, so it's not like there wasn't competition in this time slot. Still, this game just absolutely dominated, and I think people might have gotten their time's worth out of it because I really enjoyed the game. But we're going to talk about pretty much everything to do with it. But first, you guys know what time it is.
I love this.
Everybody hit the drum roll.
It is time for Game Balls and Donkeys.
Woo!
Now, I have lists of my top 5 for both.
Holy
so I'm
shit,
going to
Adam.
let you guys take yours, and then I'll take the next highest on my list so we don't duplicate.
Okay. Well,
I'll start with Game Balls. Have at it.
Okay, I'll kick it off. I'm going to give my game ball to linebacker Brian Peters for his interception. Nice. Because that, my friends, is exactly what you want to have from a young, relatively unknown guy. Because who's Brian Peters? I couldn't have told you before yesterday.
Brian Peters is a converted CFL safety who the Vikings took in, and they have moved to linebacker. There were a couple times that he got a little over-aggressive and over-pursued on a couple run plays. But overall, he was all over the field, showing some great athleticism and heart. I like your pick.
He stood up and he made a name for himself. And damn it, that's what you want from these preseason games. You want a rookie, someone to step up and go, hey, I'm here. I want on this 53 roster. Love it. Brian Peters, you get my game ball.
Nice.
I want to give a shout out. This is not my game ball, but I want to give a shout out to Mike Kafka just for coming away with a 121.3 quarterback rating last night.
QB controversy. Kafka or Bridgewater?
Yeah,
oh, no.
Right. Here we go. No, it was good to see Teddy come out. It was good to see all of our quarterbacks play. But let's be real. I'm going to make this super easy. Michael Pruitt, you're getting my game ball. You got the only touchdown of the night, and, well, minus Joe Banger, but you got the receiving touchdown. And it's going to lead straight into my donkey here in a second. I'm not going to do my donkey yet. We're going to go around the board, but I'm staying receiving for game ball and donkey. Michael Pruitt had 4 receptions for 51 yards. He had one that was almost 13. Just to see – it was a good decision on the quarterback's part, but that touchdown was very promising. It's exactly what you want to see out of a rookie draft pick. And for all the things that we talked about last week on how, the unofficial depth chart came out, and you're like, man, I wonder if we're going to lose one of our tight ends that we love. They don't get a lot of the love that they deserve because they come in and do the dirty work. But this kid, like you said, we got him this year. Hey, go out there and make a name for yourself. Pittsburgh had a field goal all night, so if you wanted to see the receiving touchdown, the only one of the night, insert Michael Pruitt. Good job. It's an easy, safe pick, but that's who I'm going with.
Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about something you didn't even mention with Michael Pruitt. Blocking. This guy not only did he catch a touchdown, not only did he find the open spot in the defense between the seams to be able to allow Mike Kafka to just throw that easy pass in there, but he had the soft hands to catch the ball, and he can block, guys.
Yeah,
They kept him in to block on a pass rush, and he demolished the guy.
leveled the dude.
Michael Pruitt, I loved this guy coming out of the draft. I had a humongous amount of hype for him. My only problem with him at the time was that I didn't see a spot for him on the Vikings roster, considering all the tight end depth. But right now, Michael Pruitt is just jumping up that depth chart, showing that what I saw on tape from him is the real deal.
We have two secret weapons in Michael Pruitt and Stephon Diggsy. There's two guys that, you're gonna focus your attention on Adrian Peterson and Mike Wallace and Kyle Rudolph, and then you're accidentally gonna leave Michael Pruitt or Stephon Diggs wide open, and these guys are gonna make big plays for this team.
Well, my top choice remaining on my list was Stephon Diggs, but since you just mentioned him, I'll skip him and Michael Pruitt, who I had at number 2, and let's skip to number 3, Gerald Hodges.
Yes.
He has continued to make his case for playing time. He was absolutely all over the field last night. He was disruptive. He was sure-handed in his tackles. You saw him develop a bit at the end of last season where he was showing a lot more dedication and a lot more football smarts to know what the right angles were, when to take chances and when not to. I'm absolutely excited about Gerald Hodges' development, and it's because of that I'm less concerned about the knee situation with Anthony Barr that I talked about earlier.
Gerald Hodges is reaching for the proverbial brass ring, and he's grabbing a hold of it and saying, I'm going to make a name for myself as well, too.
Yep. And one honorable mention, Jabari Price. He had a really solid game. I mean, I know that he was the same guy that got arrested this offseason, but he came to play, man. He had this blend of coverage that was the perfect mix of just physicalness and finesse. What he ended up with was 2 total tackles, 1 for a loss. He defended 2 passes on the goal line when they tried to run the same play to just catch him, and they couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't execute against him.
Mm-hmm.
Jabari Price played like a cornerback that knew exactly what was asked of him, and that's why I want to give him an honorable mention.
Mm-hmm.
The bad, have at it, guys. Let's talk about some donkeys.
Mr. Smith, I think you get the honors of going first for the donkey.
Oh, man. Just when you want to love the kid and you want to believe in him, Cordero Patterson gets 1 reception for 6 little yards against, we're not going to play a lot of our good top guys. AP didn't hit the field. Pittsburgh definitely wasn't playing a lot of their star players, a lot of them being on offense. But Cordero's been matched up a lot with the 2s and 3s, and it's time to step up against your competition that is most of the time not starting caliber because, we had our starting wide receivers out there for a little bit. I need to see more out of Cordero, and we all want to see it, but he needs to hit the ground running and figure it out fast. Mm-hmm. And we talked about it before the show, and I'm not going to tell everybody on the podcast what I think my prediction is, but I'm just telling you, with a guy like Stephon Diggs on the rise, and you got a solid Adam Thielen coming through camp and doing a decent outing last night.
Yay, Thielen.
Yeah. Cordero, your days are limited, sir. And you better be a damn good kick returner this year if you want any kind of spot at all. And that's all I'm going to say about that. I believe in Cordero. I just hope he puts the pieces together.
I'm going to piggyback off that really quick. I do believe they're going to give Cordero every opportunity to succeed this season because they want him.
They have to because of what they invested.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, Mike Zimmer is here to win football games. And if Cordero isn't getting it done, you will see him slide down the depth chart. They're not
like we saw last year when he got leapfrogged by Charles Johnson.
Yep, and
how he got put in the number 5 spot sometimes with Jerry Wright coming in.
Mm-hmm. Precisely. The goal is to win games, not pander and whatever to his ego. And I will say this about Cordero. What I am looking forward to for him for these next 4 preseason games is, let's presume that he's going to continue to be out there with the 2s and the 3s. The talent level that he thinks that he has, that he talks about him having, calling himself Flash and all these other things, says that he should be able to go out there and he should look out of place in a positive way, because he should be so much better than everyone else on the field. Instead, I feel like you're seeing Cordero play down to the level of talent around him and sort of disappear. Now, it's only been 1 preseason game, so I'm not going to get too worked up over it. We know it was an incredibly vanilla offense and defense because the entire NFL is at home watching the Vikings play the Steelers. We ain't going to give away what we're doing yet. I mean, come on, guys. We're not going to do that. So, keep it into perspective, but make a name for yourself, Cordero. I spent longer on that than what I was going to, so I'm going to keep my donkey short. I'm going to give my donkey to all of the people out there who are already jumping all over Trey Waynes, saying he's a bust, he's horrible, yes. Screw you, Trey Waynes. There was a guy on Twitter who claimed that, oh my God, if the Vikings were to trade him tomorrow, they'd be lucky to get a conditional 7th round pick out of you. My God, pull your head out of your ass. He's a rookie. He's never had any live action at all. Learning curve, hey, it's a little tough to play that position. Guys, he's going to get it figured out. This gets me worked up, as you can tell. But
there's a reason why Xavier Rhodes needed time to develop. And there's a reason why the Vikings brought in Terrence Newman to hold down ship for a little while.
Yes.
They know what they're doing.
Did we forget? Did we forget that we have Mike Zimmer? You think you're pissed off over his performance? Mike Zimmer's probably blue in the face with this kid. And you know what? He's going to come out better on the other side of this because of all these experiences.
But let's be honest, too. Trey Waynes had a very rough game.
Mm-hmm.
Very.
He did.
He had several penalties. He got burned on coverages. He ended up with 3 tackles, no passes defended after being targeted many times by... I'll just say it, an inferior quarterback in Landry Jones.
Mm-hmm. I'm not going to make excuses for him either. He has
a long way to go.
Yes, he does. Well, who was the guy? Jabari Price had a much better game.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean Trey Waynes is a bust, guys. I mean, come on, settle down. I know we all want him to be Darrelle Revis, but it's like the preseason to the preseason for the team right now. So settle down. It'll be fine. Take a deep breath. It'll be fine.
This is his first game against professional level talent.
Yes.
Give him a little bit of... Cut him a little slack.
And on the flip side of that, just to piggyback, I just wanted to tell everyone that if he had a lights-out game, this is a double-edged sword. Oh, well, he was playing against a third-round receiver, blah, blah, blah. There's just so many things that people want to dissect. Do you guys remember when we had Xavier coming through the ranks a couple years ago, and this kid would get a penalty on him damn near every other play?
Yep.
Yeah.
Give him time. He's figured out how to work in space. He's figured out how to be aggressive but smart. And instead of locking arms, like Trey got a penalty last night where he kind of grabbed the guy's left wrist with his right wrist. Instead of doing that, like now Xavier will get in between the space. And if he can't get a pick, he's just going to have passes deflected. And he was a monster about that last year. Mm-hmm. Give him time. If he would have went out there lights out, you guys would have made fun of him because, it's not Ben Roethlisberger and it's a third-round receiver. Like, you got to have your cake and eat it too, but sometimes you can't.
Well, let's be honest. People already come into these games with their opinions about players.
Mm-hmm.
People have their players they like. People have their players they don't like as much. And people that criticize players, they'll pick apart anything they can to make people look bad. It's like we were talking about before the show. The guy on Twitter that said that Teddy Bridgewater had a game that reminded you
Donovan McNabb.
Donovan McNabb.
That was an outrage. I don't even understand where that comparison came from. Teddy looked very McNabbish.
Did he start on the other goal line and then throw a pick?
He didn't turtle in the end zone either.
Yeah.
But Teddy Bridgewater started 5 for 5, and then had one low pass that got dropped. I think it still might have been catchable, but it was a difficult catch. But still, 5 for 6. I understand it didn't end in a touchdown, but what can you do? That's the expectations people have, is touchdown every time.
And
Fantastic
they
play
move the
every time.
chains. They move the chains very well. And that's the other thing too. Can I give a shout out? I'm sorry to interrupt you, Adam. Can I give a shout out to Jarius Wright for getting lit the hell up and then springing up right at the very end? Like everybody, you could hear everybody. Ooh, he's like, yeah, that sounded worse than what it was. Jarius Wright took a nice little hit last night. Good for you.
He's a tough little guy. He really is.
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so my donkey, I'm going to start out with my non-football donkey because this bothered me so bad. And then I'll get into my football donkey. Okay, my non-football donkey, the show Blind Spot on NBC. If you were watching that show, you saw that promo probably 20 times.
Mm-hmm.
And every time it made absolutely no sense. A tattooed woman in a box. It looked like she had hopped out in Times Square and she had a bunch of tattoos and they predict the future or something. Come on.
Adam, she's got the tattoos on the outside, but it's what's on the inside that counts.
And at Blind Spot, what is it, like, just because she can't see the tattoo on her back? What's the I don't know. I don't understand. Promote your show, that's fine, and I understand it. I know a lot of people tuned into the show, like I mentioned at the beginning, but it's overkill. That's why people hate things like Twilight, because it got shoved down our throats. You know, it's that kind of overkill. Mambo number 5. First couple times you heard it, you were like, hey, this is kind of fun. And you never wanted to hear it again. I will not watch Blind Spot for at least, I'm going to say, 3 years if it lasts that long. Because of the amount of advertisements I saw.
Needless to say, Adam will not be hosting a Blind Spot podcast.
No. But my football donkey. Let's talk about Marcus Sherrills. I still don't understand what the Vikings are trying to prove with Marcus Sherrills. We know what he can do on punt returns. Mm-hmm. Why was he even out there returning punts today when he's already established so much of what he can do? He is a good return man. The problem is that we saw a better return man in Stephon Diggs. Now, what we need to see from Marcus Sherrills is improved play at cornerback so that he can show that he's worth having stick around to play that role on the team as well as punt returner. Sadly, that did not happen. And I'm not sure what is left at this point for Marcus Sherrills. I'm rooting for him because he seems like a really good guy. He plays hard. He's always there. He had 2 tackles in this game, but I don't understand the use of him there, and I don't understand why the emphasis is being placed on the returns instead of the defense when he's trying to earn a spot. I don't get it.
I don't think I would read into that as much as what you did, Adam. You got to remember there's still 4 more preseason games that are going to be coming, and I think it was more important to Mike Zimmer to have Trey Waynes out there for essentially the entire game. And
I get that, yeah.
I feel like you kind of know what you have in Marcus Sherrills at this point. So, considering there's 4 more games and you got other rookies that you want to look at, not necessarily rookies and other players that you want to look at more, guys like Jabari Price, Trey Waynes, whatever, I think at this specific stage of the preseason, they were going, okay, let's kind of...
They were willing to sacrifice Sherrills?
Yeah. Because they're like, okay, we know we have 4 more games that we can plug him into. When is, okay, here's a question offhand. When is the first roster cut down?
I am not sure.
It's got to be soon, I guess, within the next 2 weeks.
Let's assume for a minute that there was some fringe players that they wanted to take a look at, that they know, okay, Marcus Sherrills is definitely going to make it past the first round, the first roster cut down. So we don't necessarily have to look at him this early. We got some...
September 1st, the teams have to be cut to 75.
Yeah. So where I'm going with this is that, okay, we got some guys that we want to look at that we're not sure if they're going to even make it past that first cut-down point. We know Sherrills is going to make it down to the second cut-down point, so we can kind of sit him and not really use him yet.
But that's taking away from his opportunity to prove if he's grown and developed. And I get what you're saying. I just don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem there.
I think he'll get his opportunity this preseason.
All right, so let's talk about the offense. What stuck out in you guys' mind about the offense in this game? To me, it was good, solid quarterback play. Like I mentioned earlier, Teddy Bridgewater was 5 for 6 with the one kind of low pass. He had 44 yards passing, quarterback rating of 97.2. To me, the battle for the third spot, since Sean Hill didn't play, was between Kafka and Taylor Heineke, who both went 7 for 10. Kafka with 66, Taylor with 51 yards. Kafka had one touchdown, and Taylor had the one interception that wasn't really his fault. Overall, I felt like that competition was sort of a wash.
Yeah, I agree with you on that statement. I really don't feel like I don't know any more about Heineke or Kafka now than what I did coming into it, other than I don't mean...
See, I know a little more, but I don't feel like there was any separation between the two.
Yeah, because you look at that touchdown pass and you go, well, that was blown coverage. I feel like if you're playing in the NFL, you're vying for a roster spot. You ought to be able to make that throw that he did to Michael Pruitt. So that's good that Kafka recognized it and made that throw, but it's not like that was some amazing touch pass into double coverage in the back of the end zone that he threw. That was like, you did what you were supposed to do, you recognized the blown coverage, you got the ball to where it was supposed to go, your tight end made you look good. Yeah, the interception, like you said, that wasn't really that much of a negative to me, because that was on your tight end. The ball spun out and went in an odd direction. That wasn't on Heineke, so I can't dock him for that. So I'm not really either or on these guys yet.
I'm still excited to see more from them in the upcoming preseason games, because I want to see one of these guys really just take control and prove, hey, I want to be the third quarterback on this team. That's what I'm waiting to see. The running backs now. Was anyone else as disappointed in DeJuan Harris as I was? I mean, I know that from what I've seen in Green Bay that he's not a superstar, but I knew he was capable. And from what I saw from him with his 6 carries for 17 yards, one of the carries was 9 yards, which means that he had 5 carries go for 8 yards. And it just hurts my head thinking about it. And when the roster came out and I was talking about how him being a veteran presence and he was towards the bottom of the depth chart, I can kind of get it now. I get it.
He ain't taking a roster spot away from Joe Banyard.
But Matt Asiata averaged 5 yards a carry, 6 carries, 30 yards. Jerick McKinnon, 2 carries, 2 yards. But we knew that he wasn't going to see a lot of time either. Mm-hmm. There was an end around that they tried to Mike Wallace that didn't quite work.
That was failed, to say minimally.
But it's one of those things that during preseason you give it a whirl.
Mm-hmm. I missed it.
Why not, Edie?
I must have missed that one. How bad of a fail was it, guys? Like,
it wasn't.
He just couldn't get upfield.
There wasn't a lot of time for him to make a cut. There was already coverage there.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the wide receivers, where Michael Pruitt ruled the day with 4 catches for 51 yards. He was targeted 4 times, caught all 4 of them, scored the game's only touchdown through the air. Adam Thielen, 3 catches, 4 targets, 28 yards. The highest catch average... Let me try that over. The highest average yards per catch went to Jerick McKinnon. He only caught the 1 ball for 13 yards, but he was only targeted once as well. I was happy to see Kyle Rudolph catch a couple passes before he went out. I think that's going to be a huge asset to Teddy Bridgewater if he can stay healthy.
Yeah, please stay healthy.
That's going to be an important one. Otherwise, we didn't see a lot of passes dropped, except for the only minor exception is Chase Ford, who had 2 passes thrown his way and did not catch any of them.
Just like I said about Trey Waynes earlier in the show, I'm not going to get too overly excited.
No, it's one preseason game.
About, Chase Ford's performance, but that is kind of the point of what we do, is to be critical. So I'm going to be critical and say, in a game where Michael Pruitt kind of stood up and grabbed that proverbial brass ring, Chase Ford kind of went the opposite way in this one. And, Chase Ford is a player that I believe in. I really firmly believe if
I feel comfortable when he's on the field.
Yes, I'm comfortable with him. And if he was to somehow get cut, he goes to another team and he starts for them.
He could.
Yes. But, like I said, is that you did have the other tight end that kind of stood up and made a name for himself. So it puts him maybe a little bit on notice, as to say, hey, you've got some competition. But competition breeds success. And that is what I enjoy about Rick Spielman, is that he brings in these guys, and you're not just complacent with, okay, we got Kyle Rudolph and we got Chase Ford, so we're just not going to address the tight end position. No, man, we're going to bring in someone like Michael Pruitt, and we're going to say, hey, here's competition, get better. All of you guys, get better, because that's how you win a Super Bowl. That's how you get it done.
That's such a Mike Zimmer, Rick Spielman thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's move on to the defensive side of the ball. There's a couple guys that stood out.
Wait. We didn't talk about Matt Khalil.
Okay, go ahead.
I felt, and I told you guys, and mentioned here on the podcast, I stupidly didn't get to see the first team offense because the TV cut away to National Weather Service crap. So I missed the entire first string offensive drive.
The real donkeys of the day.
Yes, it was the National Weather Service. But I have gone online and watched as much highlights as I could. And to me, it looked like Matt Khalil had a pretty good outing for the Vikings, which is what I want to see.
He stood his ground. He had a good game. Mike Harris at the right guard got his start there, and he looked good as well.
Someone posted a Vine on Twitter of Matt Khalil where he just absolutely road gradered a guy and just grabbed a hold of him and plowed him to the ground. And that is the Matt Khalil we want to see. I want to see the physical, big 10-year left tackle.
I'm going to own up a little bit because I had doubts about Matt Khalil coming into this season. The photos I saw from training camp were all him standing straight up, so I was just getting frustrated. But if he can continue the kind of effort that I saw on the football field during this Hall of Fame game, I think things might be looking a little better, especially now that he's got a little bit better talent beside him.
Exactly. Okay, now we can move on to defense.
No.
Well, the rest of us are going to move on.
Because I need to talk about Tyrus Thompson.
Okay.
6th-round draft pick. He's a big guy that I expected quite a bit from, and most of the backup offensive linemen did a good job. I was disappointed real bad by Tyrus Thompson. I was.
Adam.
And I know a lot of other people weren't watching the offensive line, especially the backup offensive linemen. But there's a reason why Tyrus Thompson wasn't a part of that competition anymore for the right guard position, and why Mike Harris won the job. Hopefully Tyrus can keep growing and developing. Like we said, he's a young player, rookie, draft pick, all that kind of stuff. But now he's still not ready. Just like another offensive lineman who didn't see action, Babatunde Aigbusi, which I'm guessing a lot of fans might have been kind of disappointed by.
I was a little disappointed. I wanted to see a couple snaps from him, at least. But, like I said, that was like the preseason to the preseason for us, folks. We got 4 more games. Babatunde, probably in that 4th preseason game, is going to be where he's going to get the bulk of his reps, I would imagine.
They'll play him when he's ready.
Yep.
They actually have different rules for having international players on the practice squad, so I'm not sure if he'll even count against the Vikings total at that point. So I don't know. At this point, I'm glad to see him on the roster, and I'm glad to see them working with him. Put him in when you feel he's ready. As far as us just sitting there watching, I know that we want to see the big guy because of the hype surrounding him, the awesome story, and just the gigantic size of the man.
Such a nice guy, too. You can't understate that one.
Absolutely.
I still think he has the best nickname in all of camp.
Yeah.
You like Babs better than Diggsy?
I like Babs. I think it's funny just for how massive he is.
It's so fun.
Barbara Streisand or what?
Yeah. You just think of a nice old lady when you say Babs, and then there's
I don't
this
think anyone even knows
gigantic.
who Barbara Streisand is anymore.
Just think of this gigantic Shrek of a man, and he's got the old lady nickname. It's fantastic. It's perfect.
All right, now let's move on to defense.
Oh,
Now that we've talked offensive line,
we got to do offensive line, Adam. It would not be
Shamar
Purple
Steven.
People podcast if we didn't.
Did you guys love watching Shamar Steven as much as I did?
I
Yes.
considered giving him my game ball.
5 total tackles, 1 sack, 1 tackle for a loss, 1 quarterback hit. This is a guy that wants to be on the team right here,
Yeah.
big time. And he wasn't the only one on the defensive line that made a real good impression. Tom Johnson again played like a guy that could be a starter almost anywhere else in the league.
Yeah, stop me if you've heard this one before. I was going to give my game ball to Tom Johnson.
2 quarterback hits, 1 sack,
That
2
dude,
total tackles. Yeah.
he is a monster. An absolute monster.
And a shout out to our people on the Facebook page for reminding me about Danielle Hunter, who is not Danielle.
Yeah, that was awesome, by the way.
Danielle Hunter had a real solid game too, 3 total tackles. He had a nice quarterback hit in there. I don't know. I'm just really excited by what I'm seeing from this defensive line. I think if this defensive line can keep getting some awesome pressure, rotating players in and out, that'll make things a lot easier for the secondary, and it's something really cool to be excited about.
Depth for days. What did I say a year or two ago when I first joined this podcast? Look what they're doing in Seattle. They've got a good rotation and they've got good depth. Even their backups out there will still give you a run for your money. Look what we're doing now. These are your guys that when Everson Griffin needs a break or Brian Robinson is just not cutting it, you can throw in there. I'm sorry, I'm not taking a poop on Brian Robinson. I love you. Yeah. But
Even
it's
veterans need a little bit of a break too sometimes.
they need motivation, and it's only going to make it better. And I love it. It's such a positive. It's besides Mike Zimmer being a cornerback whisperer, it's what he loves. He loves to stop the run, and he'll tell you that first and foremost. That's what we need to do, and I think they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. Even though I have to say, last night the kid Dree Archer did get to do a little bit of what he wanted last night. It was pretty crazy.
Dre
He had a pretty good
Archer,
game.
Dre Archer though, was
He's
also
so fast.
I'm not really high draft pick for the Steelers. So yeah, that's the flip side to that equation too.
He's a really talented guy, elusive and quick, and
He was
I can understand him taking advantage of other teams. I can.
listeners to the show might remember he was one of the guys that I had wanted the Vikings to draft.
It's true.
Yeah.
That is true. All right, so I got a little quiz for you guys. The Vikings defended 3 passes during that game.
Audie
I
Cole.
said that 2 of them was Jabari Price.
Audie Cole.
Who was the other one?
Audie Cole.
It was not.
Yeah, it was. He had the tipped power. Well, I guess that doesn't count though.
The one you're thinking about ended up being caught still.
Yeah.
I saw that as well.
Yep.
The other pass defended was defensive end Justin Trateau.
Ooh.
You, sir, are correct.
And I love seeing people just get to that line and get their hands up.
Mm-hmm.
Because you never know what you can deflect, what can happen. We saw a lot of balls batted backwards. When you got a guy like Landry Jones at quarterback, and you can pressure him, he's going to make some mistakes. Because of that, I was kind of disappointed that the Vikings couldn't force more turnovers off of him.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like the Vikings' first-team defense stood out there for a very long time either. So
Yeah, you know who was
that's the other thing.
really good about doing that back in the day for Minnesota would have been Kevin Williams. Was always excellent. Big old Kevin Williams, excellent about knowing when to kind of pull back on the rush and to just get those big old mitts up in the air and deflect balls down at the line.
Yeah, such a cool
Mm-hmm.
way to play. And it's smart and it's fundamental, and that is Mike Zimmer football right there. Let's talk about special teams because there isn't much good to talk about all around. The punting was horrible.
Surprise.
Blair Walsh couldn't connect on anything except for his kickoffs. And let's see what else we got here. The long snapper battle was a joke. Both of them just absolutely struggled. Both had snaps that were very off the mark that forced Jeff Locke to correct,
Mm-hmm.
or at least attempt to correct. It was hard to watch.
I think we might have the worst punter in the National Football League.
Didn't he not make the top 32 rankings?
Yeah,
About
that's right. He did.
It's true.
I'm not worried about Blair Walsh. I mean, I'm just not worried about Blair Walsh. We know that when the game counts, when the game's on the line, I trust him to get the job done. So whatever. That was whatever. The long snapping thing, get it figured out. I mean, I don't. Whether it's Cullen.
I'm glad they brought in competition, and I know it's just one game, but we need to see better from at least one of those guys.
Yeah, whether it's Cullen, whether it's the other guy.
Kevin McDermott.
Yeah, nostalgia is going to tell me I want Colin Loeffler to get it, but if not, it's long snapper. Really don't care.
Speaking of talking about kickers and special teams and all that good stuff, I hate to relate something that's not Vikings football, but we did play the Steelers. Did any of you guys, and this is some general NFL news for people that are going to listen tomorrow or whenever this goes up.
Swisham?
Yep. The Pittsburgh Steelers kicker tore his ACL, and they are going to be hurting in that department now. They're going to have to go do some searching.
He is done for the year.
Ouch.
That's insane.
You don't want to see anyone get hurt in the preseason.
Was the glorious part of this Minnesota Vikings preseason game, is that they got out healthy after evaluating so many players.
Mm-hmm.
That is the point of preseason right there.
And you never know how crucial it is. Because now, you saw it last night with Blair. Some of his kicks, I know one of the field goals he made, I mean, it was very close to the left. Now, granted, it was a made field goal, good for you. But these things are, like 33 yards away now? You can't take for granted how valuable a kicker is. So, sorry, Pittsburgh, for your loss. That sucks.
Yeah, talking about injuries, too, you saw how careful they were. They sat most of their stars.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And it's just you never know what'll happen in the NFL.
Kicking and punting is hard. We all make fun of special teams players and whatnot and don't call them football players, but that is incredibly difficult to do. I don't care. I can't do it. Can you do it, Adam? Can you do it, Kyle Smith? I can't.
I can punt a little.
You can punt? Well, there you may be better punter than Jeff Locke. But my point is that, like...
I can't kick, though.
When these guys do well, when they're, when Blair Walsh is on the run like what he was last season or the season before, give these guys credit, man.
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that's all I've got for the offense, the defense, and the special teams. I think that was a pretty good, thorough review of the Hall of Fame game.
It was fun.
Next week, we are looking at the Minnesota Vikings versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and this one could be fun, folks. Especially if Tampa Bay plays their guys, because they have an exciting young rookie quarterback. They have some of the tallest wide receivers in the business. This is going to be kind of a matchup problem for the Vikings all around, and I'm excited to see how the defense will go about this. I'm excited to see Minnesota's kind of newish look offense go up against Leslie Frazier's defense again.
You stole my thunder.
It's going to be fun.
I was going to bring up old Leslie Frazier. I'm excited to see what our first string defense what kind of problems they provide for one Jameis Winston. I'm going to be bold here. I don't see the Tampa 2 scaring anyone. I don't think that it's going to be a cakewalk. After all, Leslie does know a lot of these guys. But, exciting is an understatement. I'm ready to see at any point in time what a number 2 or number 1 overall pick is going to do for any team, especially when we afford the opportunity to play them. So I'm really excited to see what Jameis does with the limited amount of time that he'll be out there and see if he's the real deal or not.
And in the Vikings' 5th preseason game, we will get to see Marcus Mariota.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So it's going to be fun.
I don't like Jameis Winston, so I am looking for... He ain't listening to this. Who cares?
He might be. He might have people listening.
I doubt it. I am looking forward to seeing Everson Griffin eat him for lunch.
Oh, my.
Aren't you guys? And it'll be a good test. Like you said, Adam, they got some big, tall receivers out there in Tampa Bay.
I love Mike Evans.
Yes. let's see how our big, tall, physical corners, now that we have in Minnesota, can match up against them. Like, let's see Xavier, let's see how Trey Waynes does on his bounce back game now, and let's see what he can go out there. Let's see what this kid's made of.
I would love to see Xavier against Mike Evans. That would be a fun thing to watch all day long.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch that if that happens, because that's good football right there.
That's a thing of beauty.
That is all we have for that this week. Let's talk about the social media question, then I think we'll be done. I asked you guys on Facebook, I asked you guys who you think will win the NFC North this year. Now, let's be honest. We all have in our hearts, we know that the Vikings are an up-and-coming team, and we love the Vikings, and we want them to win. But it is the Green Bay Packers division right now. For them to win, the Minnesota Vikings will have to beat them in order to get to that spot. So let's see what you guys said. Thomas Bouge says, Packers win the division, but I'm okay with wild card. Emmanuel Mueller says the division will be decided as the season expires in Lambeau.
I like that.
Dorian Foley says, I might sound like a homer, but I could care less. The Minnesota Vikings have a legitimate shot at the division because of this year's draft. AP is back in full swing, Teddy B is going to shine, and we have a heck of a head coach in Mike Zimmer who takes no crap and is dedicated 110% in building this team to be the absolute best it can be.
Excellent answer.
James Frank says, Hart says Vikings, but we could see the Packers winning and the Vikings taking the wild card. Coleman Lewis Bounds says the Vikings by 1 win or 2 above the Packers. Keith Bell says, I love my Vikings with all my heart, but they may still be a year away. It's an honest answer. I appreciate that. Corbin Johnson says, I think the Packers will win the division unless Aaron Rodgers gets hurt, but the Vikings will get the wild card. Chuck Holcomb says the Vikings, of course. And if you guys are ready for a nice, long, in-depth one.
Was it Rick?
Tommy Gunn's at it again.
Oh, Tommy. I thought maybe it was Rick.
I do like Tommy Gunn. He says the Packers will win the division unless the following happen in a team-by-team breakdown. Vikings, the defense goes on to be dominant, landing a top 5 spot overall. The offense takes the next steps to become efficient, stay on the field and put up points, or heck, explode, go full 1998 out there, because either way it gets the job done, and do not have a losing record in the division. Keep home field advantage real.
I love it.
The Packers will win the division. With how many proven players in the secondary to be replaced with rookies, they fail to actually shut down the Vikings on third down, and or Rodgers goes down for the year. That'd probably do it. Lions, they continue their tradition of failing after year of success, yet keep the fantasy numbers rolling. Bears, LOL Bears, keep up your success from last year, and please finally lose a game to the Vikings at Soldier Field for the first time since 2007. If all that falls into place, the Vikings will win the division. Otherwise, it's the Packers' place to lose.
I love it. I love every week listening to your answers. I really do.
It's so cool to get that kind of interactive stuff from our fans.
Mm-hmm. You know, if you think about it, if the Vikings would, it'd actually be easier for them if they could win the division as opposed to getting into the wild card, because you look at teams that are potential wild card teams, man, that's a tough road to climb to go through right there. You know that?
True.
Mm-hmm.
It is true. Next week, we are going to be looking at asking you guys about player numbers being retired. Now, we've had plenty of players have their jersey numbers retired, from the great Fran Tarkenton, Alan Page. We got so many just Vikings legends.
Corey Stringer, Mick Tingelhoff.
Yeah. Who should be next? That's what we're going to ask you. Who should be the next Vikings player to have their number retired? And I think that we're going to have a fun discussion with that next week, because we already know that we all pretty much disagree. But it'll be a fun discussion anyway.
I think me and Mr. Smith are on the same page.
Yeah, we're going to put Ponder in the Donkey Hall of Fame.
You betcha. You got to get rid of that number 7. That thing's no luck.
It's not lucky at all. Not even close.
That's all I have for this week. Do you guys have anything else you want to add before we sign out?
I don't have the bold statement. We'll get around to that when we have more to talk about. I just wanted to say that I'm looking at Bleacher Report right now, and you guys, we were talking about this before the air. The Minnesota Vikings lead the pack with 18 arrests. We were just talking about how the Houston Texans had the cleanest slate of all the teams, and we were like, if they put the window in correctly, whatever they spin it, the Vikings could be the worst. And according to Bleacher Report, we have the most player arrests in the last 5 years. So yay for being delinquents.
We're number one.
We'll end the show not on that note. Someone has to have some other statement to make. We can't end it on that.
I'm going to stick with my Cordero Patterson statement. I try to have something in line. Usually I wing it. It's just how I roll. Cordero, get your crap together.
No, we're ending positive.
No. I'm going to go transfer this. We're going to segue, Paul Blart. Stephon Diggs. Diggsy.
Blarty.
I love the competition that's going to go on between these two. I'm excited as could be. Shout out to Michael Pruitt again for a good game. But Diggsy, what a fantastic punt return you had.
Yes.
Gotta find that end zone, kid.
I know. I can't believe he didn't.
It could have been a touchdown, but who knows? There wasn't enough evidence to overturn anything, so they had to keep it the way they called it. But oh well. Still a fantastic effort that I really enjoyed. And we apologize to you guys for going long. We just had so much content with the first football game. We're all just so excited about that. And we couldn't ignore Mick Tingelhoff going in the Hall of Fame. That's something that fans of the show know I'm very passionate about. When an offensive lineman, one of the guys down in the trenches, just gets an honor like that for the Minnesota Vikings, I can't ignore it.
You guys, give us a little bit of feedback here, too. Now, since we're getting into the meat and potatoes of this podcast, where we get to do game reviews and game previews now, do you want us to go maybe a little bit longer, kind of a little more in-depth with it, with the team? Like, if that's something you guys are interested in, let us know.
Do you want us to do a musical episode where we sing everything?
Yeah, I want to do that. Let's auto-tune it. Let's do an all auto-tune episode.
We've actually talked about that before.
I'm out.
But on that note, I'd like to thank you guys for listening. Remember to head on over to Facebook. Check us out there at Purple People Pod on the Twitter machine. In the meantime, stay classy, Minnesota.